I didn't even have like any second thoughts about, oh, he's not Asian, right? There is no boundaries. Like I didn't.
That never even like crossed your
my
mind. Yeah, it's just
like,
this is
we got along. We had fun.
You saw him as a person.
I saw him as exactly a person. What surprised me is that, with the melting pot that we live in, when we went out on dates, like people were staring at us, or I could see their heads like turning and following as I'm like walking by, or they turn around, do a double take.
Oh God.
And
some people have no shame either.
Yeah, and I just thought that was very interesting and kind of uncomfortable in a way too.
That normally wouldn't happen if you were dating, quote, your own race, right?
Yeah, because my relationship before that was an Asian guy, and that didn't happen. Hi, welcome to the Magnetic Mismatch Show. This is Linda.
And this is Will, and I'm feeling loose.
Whoa, that's aggressive.
Get your mind out of the gutter, please. Can you please defend me? Tell people why.
Okay,
why do I feel so loose?
Fine. We got a chiropractic adjustment today.
Yeah, so basically what that means is I got my back cracked. And my legs and my arms and my neck, everything.
Your head.
But I feel good. I feel really good after.
Yeah. We started going about, a year ago. Well, before
a little over a year ago.
Yeah, before the pandemic. Yeah. So we started going pretty frequently.
Yeah.
We were going at least once a month, and then the pandemic hit and we stopped going for an entire year because we just felt like it wasn't necessary.
It wasn't safe yet.
It wasn't safe. Yeah. And we didn't want to put ourselves at, any additional risk.
Right.
So we decided not to go. We just started cutting out certain things, and that was one of it. And now, since we've been fully vaccinated for a while now, and the numbers have dropped significantly, which is amazing. We decided, let's go back.
Yeah, especially with all the, sitting that we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't realize, like, sometimes when you're working on your computer, you're kind of like hunched over on your keyboard, right? Then like your body's going to get stiff. It's going to get misaligned. Yeah. And before, I do have to thank you though, because before I used to be very scared of going to the chiropractor because I was always hearing horror stories, like, oh, that person, when I went to the chiropractor, they, cracked my back and now I can't like function correctly. It's like, dude, that's scary.
See, on the other hand, I've always had a good experience with a chiropractor. I used to get adjustments when I was like in my teens.
What?
not.
Wait, did you have any issues or
no issues?
You just went for fun or what?
I didn't just go for fun. My dad used to. For a while he was having like nerve pain, so he was going to an acupuncture. It was like a facility, and they had chiropractic adjustments there too.
I see. Okay.
And I happened to just
like a 2-for-1.
No. I just happened to just try it.
Yeah.
Because out of curiosity.
Yeah. Oh, that looks fun. I love that cracking noise that they make on your neck.
Yeah, I think the only reason why is because like the acupuncture takes like an hour, and I always saw that they had the like massage tables.
Oh,
and
okay.
Where you lie down and it like rolls like this like little like a shiatsu ball that massages you. And I'm like, ooh, that looks really good. And in order to get that treatment, you need to do a chiropractic adjustment. So I'm like, I'll give it a try since I have an hour to kill. So why not?
Yeah.
So I tried it, and then I'm like, only a couple of times. I didn't go very often. I was like, ooh, that felt nice.
I have to admit, I'm hooked. Like, after actually finally going to you convincing me and getting an actual legit doctor which is important, right? You need to check your professionals.
You always need to check and vet them to make sure that they're
I had a good experience. Like after the adjustment, I mean, I didn't get injured or anything, and I felt really loose and just relaxed
Mhm.
afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going back for more.
Yeah. I think when I first came in the office, um, she's like, lie on your back. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, you see how one of your feet, feet is higher than the other one?
Oh, when you're lying down,
Yeah.
one's
Yeah.
raised up and the
Yeah,
other's
like slightly, it's like
okay.
by very, like, a couple millimeters. Like it's, you would have to look at it pretty
Or
carefully.
you have to have a trained eye like her, right, to see that.
Yeah, and well, I think she helps me by putting her hands just
Yeah.
to see, and then I'm like, yeah, I do. She's like, okay, it's not because it's one is bigger than the other.
Hmm.
It's because your hip is slightly off its alignment. So one is a little bit more forward, and the right side is a little bit more forward than the back, and that makes a huge difference because she said that if you don't fix that alignment over time, when your body compensates for the other side when it's misaligned, you're gonna start to experience pain
Oh
down the
wow.
lane. So that's why
Did that scare you?
no, not
She
really.
was
I
basically
mean,
telling you in medical terms like you're lopsided.
yeah, basically. And so yeah, and so that's why she recommends that you get an adjustment like at least once a month when you're not experiencing any pain, is because it's easier to prevent pain than
Right.
to treat pain.
100%.
Yeah, and I guess that's with anything,
Yeah.
right? Um and it's not because I'm abnormal. It's normal because, like you said, we sit all day or we stand all day.
Hmm.
There's it's bound to happen.
Yeah, and you don't think about that stuff, right? That
Yeah.
that you're standing with more weight on one side than the other, or that by the just wear and tear, you should probably look at that and get it adjusted.
Hmm.
And it actually helps a lot. Just
Yeah,
like any other kind of health
absolutely.
prevention stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, our topic today is a good one.
That's what you say every week.
I do. We always have good topics though. So I'm not lying. But it's a good one because it is about
Interracial dating.
yeah, it is. But the reason this came up was
We were having dinner, and of course, your mom called you.
duh, she loves me. Why wouldn't she call me?
Okay. I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remind you about when we first started dating. She used to call Will by the hour to check up to make sure that I didn't murder him or anything. But that's a different topic for a different
Different
day.
topic, different day.
Yeah. So she called, and we were having dinner. So you muted the phone because we were eating. And a thought came over my head, and I was laughing.
As usual.
Yeah.
You're always laughing at me, like out of nowhere too. And I always have to wonder like what's going on? What did I do?
Yeah, and I was laughing, and I'm like, oh, it's funny to me that it's just pretty comical. It's like the universe's way of
Like playing a prank almost, right?
pranking your mom,
Yeah.
right? It's like a pretty hilarious. How your mom is never shy or not vocal about wanting you guys to marry a traditional Chinese girl or boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it comical that any of you three
Mm-hmm.
are dating or married to someone within her parameters.
Right. I think a big part of it is probably it could be just because she pushed so hard. Like a lot of times like kids, right? When you tell them not to do something, they're gonna do the opposite, or they do that, right?
Yeah.
I think for us, I don't know if it was intentional, like that, oh, I'm not gonna date or marry a Chinese girl then, or a Chinese boy or whatever, right? Like for my siblings and I, it just kind of happened that way. But I think for her, part of the reason why that was so important is because she just wants to be able to communicate, because she speaks limited English, okay? And so her primary language is like Cantonese and Mandarin. And so I think for her, it was important because she wanted to be able to communicate with our or her future daughter-in-law and son-in-law. Which, by the way, I think it's actually a benefit that you guys don't know how to communicate with each in only in a limited way.
Limited way, yeah.
It saves a lot of drama and arguments, right?
Yeah.
So
that's why the relationship is good.
Yeah, there you go.
We could only smile and have pleasant conversations with each other.
Perfect.
Yep,
all part of the plan.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So obviously, you and I, we're both Asian, even though I'm Chinese and you're Vietnamese. And obviously there's some similarities, but I would say that there's some pretty distinct differences too, right? Within our cultures and our ethnicities. And so I think for us, speaking on this topic, even though it's not interracial because we're both Asian, I think it does still have a parallel, to interracial dating, where it's dating outside of your own race, because there's a lot of similar challenges that we experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, when people think of Asians or when they see two Asians, they just kind of lump us into this one subcategory, Asians.
Yeah.
But, within the Asian community, it's very diverse in tradition and culture.
Yeah.
Because within Asia, you have many different countries.
Right. And they're not all the same.
No, because you have like Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, Koreans.
Yep, exactly.
And then within that, and then of course, there's a lot more countries, and then you have subgroups within the country as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes people oversimplify, right? Like Asians, and they kind of make it feel or seem like you guys are all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not fair, because we have very unique differences.
Yeah, and features too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know, like there's always a joke, oh, all Asians look alike.
Right, no. And that's I think something that needs to be changed, right? I think part of it is just because people aren't as educated about it, right? Yeah. But when they really learn and they understand, it's like, oh, a Chinese person is very different from a Thai person, or a Korean person, or whatever. And so I think when people are educated about that, it definitely opens them up to also expanding, their perspective, maybe empathizing a little bit more, and maybe learning a thing or two that can be beneficial for them, right, as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like thinking about Europeans, right? You don't lump the Italians with the French, because you know that culturally and traditions are very different from each other.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think the differences, even within the Asian groups, should be celebrated and highlighted, right? It shouldn't be something like just dismissed as, you guys, let's just put them in the Asian category. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah. But with that being said, you and I, the reason why I feel like we can relate to interracial dating is because of our unique cultures and traditions. Because you're Chinese and I'm Vietnamese, and we were raised, with different upbringings.
Yeah, but there's still some similarities as well.
I mean, there's always, similar core values that, you and I, we relate to. And I feel like our relationship, our basis is based on the same core values. And that's why it's strong.
Sure, absolutely. So then coming back to the interracial question, dating and marriage and all that stuff, have you, or would you be open to interracial dating, or have you ever done it?
So the answer is yes and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm open to interracial dating. And yes, I've also been in an interracial relationship. So I dated a guy who's Hispanic.
Okay.
And I'm Vietnamese, so that makes us interracial.
Right. Truly interracial, right? It's not just Asian and Asian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Truly interracial. I was about, I think, like 18 or 19, so pretty young.
Yeah, you're like a baby.
Yeah, a baby.
Yeah.
Right? And, I didn't even have like any second thoughts about, he's not Asian.
Ah,
Right? There is no boundaries. Like I didn't
that never even like crossed
cross
your
my
mind.
mind.
Yeah, it's just, oh,
like
this is
we got along.
Mhm.
We had fun.
You saw him as a person.
I saw him as exactly a person.
Right.
And I think for us too, we live in a very special area. We live
do.
in Los Angeles. It's a melting pot of a lot of different ethnicities.
And cultures, and yeah, we get exposure to it, right? It's like you have a lot of different groups that exist here,
Yeah.
a lot of people, and so you're exposed to it. Doesn't mean it's necessarily really integrated, but it's you've seen different people,
Yeah.
from different backgrounds.
Exactly. And what surprised me is that, with the melting pot that we live in, when we went out on dates, like I felt like people were, people were staring at us.
Wow.
Like not everybody, not a lot.
I know exactly what you
but
mean. Yeah.
it's like some people, like I could see their head.
You could
like,
feel their eyes on you.
Yeah, or I could see their head like turning and following as I'm like walking by, or they turn around, do a double take.
Oh God.
And
some people have no shame either. They'll like just straight up like look at you and like stare you down, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and I just thought that was very interesting and kind of uncomfortable in a way too.
Right, because you probably normally wouldn't happen if you were dating, quote, your own race, right?
Yeah, because my relationship before that was an Asian guy, and that didn't happen. So for me to go from that
it was a new experience.
Yeah, to getting stared at was a pretty interesting experience. But besides from that, I felt like the cultural differences really hurt our relationship.
Okay.
We couldn't get, I guess there's like a miscommunication and misunderstanding. Because, in the Asian culture, and I'm pretty sure you understand this, like I didn't introduce you to my parents until we were like, I was
serious.
Very serious. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get married, probably soon.
Yeah, exactly. You waited a long time to introduce me.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because my parents never said I couldn't bring a guy home, or, I think it's just like the unspoken rule in the family. Like, because I saw, my aunt, like she didn't bring, just any guy home and
right, like a new guy every other month.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
When you bring a guy home,
it's a pretty big deal.
It's a big deal.
I see.
You're probably gonna have to marry him like within the next month. Kind of deal.
Right. I know what you mean.
Or
though.
like
yeah.
or like tomorrow.
That's what your parents like. If you brought somebody home, they're like, oh, when are you guys getting married? Kind of thing, right? They just assume that since you brought them home, that they are therefore destined and to be your partner.
Or you bring them home and you better have a wedding invitation ready, to give them, right? So for me, I have never brought a guy home to meet my parents except you, ever. Yes. And
you did the right thing.
And maybe, so.
But what about his side of it?
Yeah. So his side of the family, I guess for him, after dating just a couple months, he brought me home to meet his mom, his siblings.
Wow.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah, and we used to just chill and hang out at his house. Sometimes his mom was there. She invited me for dinner. It was just
like a normal thing.
It's like a normal thing, and he pressured me into introducing him to my family, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. And
you try to explain it.
Yeah, I try to explain it to him. I'm like, you have a wedding invitation? I'm sorry if you don't. Like, you can't come over. I cannot just introduce you to my parents.
Yeah, he didn't realize what that actually meant, right, in your culture.
Yeah, and it created a lot of tension. His reasoning was that he wasn't good enough for me to bring home to my parents.
Well, he thought that's why you didn't want him brought over, right?
Yeah, that I'm too good, that I think that I'm too good for him, man. Like above him. And
so that caused some issues.
A lot of issues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He thought I was embarrassed of him. But I'm like, but
this was even after you explained to him?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I guess he couldn't grasp.
But then that's
that.
on him then at that point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he thought I was just making it up too.
Oh.
But
I can kind of see that.
I mean, I can see that, right?
If you're not familiar with someone's culture, it's like I don't know.
Because it sounds outrageous.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But, so I guess it goes both ways, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's funny.
Yeah.
But what about like what were some of the positive things then that you feel like came out of that experience? I mean, obviously, I don't want people to think that it's all negative. I'm sure there were some positive things you got from dating somebody outside of your race as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice because I realized that even though we're different in our races,
yeah,
but we had some core values that are similar, like family oriented, right? He takes care of his mom.
Yeah.
His mom likes to cook for them, just like my parents. So I realized that like regardless of how quote unquote different we may be, there are similarities that did stand out, and it was nice to be able to have like an authentic, quote unquote authentic meal. I don't know what that really means, but you get the point. Like a family tradition meal, like for their family.
Right.
That, and then it opened my eyes to realizing that at the end of the day, like it's the person that makes the relationship. It's not what their ethnicity or race is.
Right.
It's the person. So if they don't treat you well, they don't treat you well regardless. If they treat you well, they'll treat you. It's the person. So at the end of the day, makes me realize that love is love.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I think for me, I've also dated outside of my race, and although none of those relationships were really like anything serious, where I brought them home to see mom and dad.
Oh, with your mom. You better have the wedding invitation ready, the gown ready.
So yeah, I mean, earlier in college and then after college too. Yeah, before like dating you, I did date different people, different ethnicities, and honestly, it was more out of curiosity, because I wanted to make my dating experience as diverse as possible, because I didn't want to limit myself or my experience to just people that are quote unquote look like me, right? I was kind of curious, and that caused me to be more open to dating different people, just see what it's like, see maybe what I can learn and stuff like that. So I always had that kind of mindset. I don't know where it came from, because it wasn't like someone told me, oh, you should be open-minded or anything like that. I just had that feeling. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a positive experience for me, even though those relationships didn't turn into anything serious. Like I learned a lot about different cultures. I got to see firsthand the interactions, of the family, because I did get invited to a couple of people's homes and had a home cooked meal. It's always the food.
It's
right?
always the food.
Trying different food. That's always a perk, like home cooked, authentic. And like you said, like you realize like we're just people and we all kind of want the same stuff, same things,
Yeah.
But also it was cool to see the differences too. And sometimes people look at the differences as a negative thing, but I feel like the differences is what makes us like interesting. And when you learn about it, it gave me a chance to kind of see something completely different from what I'm used to growing up, or at least up until that point in life. I think that's why you and I both love traveling too, right? It's just learning about different people and cultures,
Yeah.
But I will say though that as we were talking about, there are definitely challenges as well, because one of the things I thought about, even though we're just kind of casually dating, is kind of like, well, can I see what would it be like if we actually did get serious?
Yeah.
What kind of issues can come up? And it makes you really think, you know what I mean? Like, because we have some very different backgrounds or cultures or beliefs and things like that, you kind of have to think further ahead to see, almost like envision, what would life be like, right? and it's not always positive.
Yeah. I know, like, when I was getting the stares, um, I know it had nothing to do with me, but I've part of me felt like a little bit like shame almost. Like, am I doing something
Wow.
wrong? Right? Or
Ah.
why are these people looking at me like that?
Yeah.
Are they looking down at me? But back then
Mm-mm.
when you're that young, I didn't have the same confidence,
Right.
right? So it really did affect me, and
You
the
felt
I
judged and you
felt
felt like, yeah.
judged. Yeah, and it's hard. It puts additional like strain on the relationship, and I think it made me less affectionate. I didn't want to hold hands or anything because I didn't want,
Right.
because it's just like one of those, it made me uncomfortable.
It was like unwanted negative attention, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's weird because when you think about it, like we're in 2021 and the world is becoming more and more intermingled, right? Especially here in the US, you would think, right? It's lots of different countries kind of coming here, people from different backgrounds, I mean, from different countries. And us out here in SoCal, in Los Angeles, one of the most diverse cities in the world, and yet I still feel like it is a little bit of a taboo, right? When you see an interracial couple, or um, you feel like people still have this hang up over people dating outside their race.
Hmm.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's uncomfortable to see like an unknown or
Something different, right?
something different, not unknown, but
Yeah. Even
like
though it's
something.
more acceptable now,
Yeah,
right? You see more, yeah.
you see it more often, but it's still
But it's
not
still,
that
yeah,
common.
right.
And especially, in my case, we're talking about like 10 plus years ago. So
Sure. Yeah.
it's even more distinct back then. But also, I think that since, especially LA, we have a lot of people immigrating from other countries.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times, like, that's what they've been taught.
Mm-hmm.
So it's embedded into their
Their
culture,
beliefs.
their beliefs. It's what they know, they've known, and it's been passed down for many generations. That
Right. Well,
you
that's their normal,
that's
right?
their normal, exactly, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't blame them for it either,
Right.
right? And even in the U.S.,
Yeah.
if we look at history,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until about like what 50 years ago or something. I don't know, but it's not too long ago
Mm-hmm.
where interracial marriage was not legal.
It was illegal, right? Yeah.
Yes. So when you look at it from a cultural, like a
As a nation, even like from a big, like systemic way,
yeah,
it wasn't accepted.
exactly. So it takes a long time for people to break down those
Right.
barriers.
Because the people that were around back then passed those same beliefs down to the next generation and then the next generation. And it starts slowly getting filtered out, right? I feel like our generation and the younger generations were more open to it. And it's also about exposure too, right? Like we were saying, if you see people of different ethnicities, different backgrounds all the time, it's not a big deal. But let's say you go to a state or a country where they don't typically have people that don't look like them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then it is going to be something that they're curious about. It may not always be a negative thing, may not be like racism or, stereotypes or things like that, but they might just be curious too
Yeah.
because they've never seen somebody that looks like that.
Yeah.
So it is interesting.
Yeah.
I think from a dating perspective, though, if you're planning on being in an interracial relationship, you kind of have to, whether it's fair or not, I feel like you have to go in knowing that there is going to be additional challenge. There are going to be additional layers of challenges,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like things you're going to have to deal with that most couples normally wouldn't have to deal with.
Yeah. And I think like it's like I was reading an article. It was like, what's the most annoying question you get the most often when you're dating like
Interracial, yeah.
when you're in an interracial relationship, and the number one question is what does your family think about it, right? Because it's true.
It's a natural
It's a
question.
natural
Yeah.
question.
It's true though.
So it just shows you that
It's beyond just a couple.
yeah, exactly.
Right? There's a lot of outside parties and factors that you have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're gonna go more beyond just dating, right?
Yeah. You have to deal with the family. Are they okay with that? You know, are
Should,
they?
but does it matter? Like in that case,
I
let's say
think
you really like somebody and you've been dating them and they're not, let's say your family's maybe not against it, but they're not necessarily welcoming with it, or maybe they are against it. I don't know.
okay, let's say they're against it. But see, that's the problem. I feel like being in a relationship is hard enough. And for you to have to deal with another layer outside factor, especially family, which they have a lot of influence
Hmm.
on, the person that you're dating. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that just makes it a lot harder. So that's like another challenge that you and your partner have to deal with.
Yeah, and you kind of have to know that that's a possibility, right? When you go into
And there's a
that,
possibility they would never accept you. And that that's the truth.
that's the truth, and it's a matter of what are you guys both okay with that, knowing that that could be a possibility, right?
Yeah. And I know, and I've read stories where it's like it's like an annoying thing is that I think someone wrote an article about them going to like Disneyland together
Hmm.
in a group, and he was like the only white guy in the
Hmm.
group, and the person cut him off because they didn't think he was part of the family. So
Oh,
I'm like, so
that's
now you're
hilarious.
getting cut off in lying. It's like it makes you feel like you don't belong.
Because people have like preconceived notions, right?
Yeah.
Or certain images of what goes together, what doesn't go together, kind of
Yeah.
thing in their head,
Yeah.
right or wrong. Yeah. I think also like with challenges, it's kind of like, because you are marrying in, you know how they joke about with when you're marrying, you're not just, it's just you two getting married, you're marrying the
The
family,
family.
right? As well.
Absolutely.
And I read a story about like I don't know if it was an official news article. It was just like a I don't know something on Reddit that I read. I like scrolling through there, but it was about like um, the wife and husband. They're interracial and they're getting married. They're obviously in love, but then the bride's sister has always made racial remarks or little things that she kind of masks and says, "Oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke," right? She's making very offensive comments about her sister's husband
Yeah.
or future husband. And so it was hard for the sister to hear that. Talk about family not accepting of the relationship, not only not accepting, but kind of almost like antagonizing things, right?
Yeah.
And so she made the decision ultimately to not invite the sister because she just wouldn't stop, even though she had a talk with her about, hey, this is very offensive. This is my future husband. You don't have to like him, but you got to accept that that's going to, he's going to be family.
Hmm.
And she wouldn't stop. And so she disinvited her to the wedding.
I mean, if you can't respect her husband even after she talked to you, then you don't deserve
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be there
Yeah.
because a joke can be very hurtful too, especially when the intent
The intent. Yeah.
is to hurt somebody.
Right. But you
Then
just say, oh, it's a joke to mask it. Right.
yeah, but if it's not funny, then you should stop.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, those are some things you might have to deal with in that type of relationship.
Yeah.
And there might be religious differences too. And that's always difficult.
Yeah.
I think,
Especially when you have children. So
yeah,
it's like who's
that's the other complexity,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's kind of like my parents. My mom is Buddhist and my
Hmm.
dad is Catholic,
Ah,
right? So they agreed that they were going to raise us Catholic growing up. So my mom converted actually
oh,
when
so
she
you're
married
saying
my
one
dad.
side will likely you almost have to pick, right?
Yeah, but it was interesting though.
How
'Cause,
will the kids be raised,
yeah.
or is it possible to do both?
Yeah, okay. This is the interesting part. So when I was with my dad and his family, I would practice I would go to church, right? And a Catholic church.
Hmm.
But then when I was with my mom, my grandpa, and
Then
her
you were
family,
Buddhist.
I would go to temples.
Oh my goodness! So you were caught in the middle,
Yeah,
basically.
but the nice part was that my dad and my mom, they never um badmouth anyone's like religion. They both like
They were
embraced.
open-minded.
They embraced both sides, and I think for them, the takeaway, whether we went to the temples or whether we went to church, was just to be a good person. And they're like,
You found this commonalities,
yeah,
right,
they're
between
like
the two religions.
they're like, no matter which side you go to, which religion, it's just do the right thing at the end of the day, because their general thing is that there's always a higher being that kind of judges you on, I don't know if this is good or not, but it kind of determines like your, because they both of them, for both religions, they believe in an afterlife, right?
I see, right.
And it's just like this higher being judges your decisions here on earth. So just do the best that you can, and that's all they're asking for.
Right.
So they were okay. Like they didn't oppose me going to,
That's
my
so
dad.
interesting.
Yeah, my dad didn't oppose me going to the temples. My mom, encouraged us to go to church. It was good.
I think that's cool because then that allows you to get exposed to both religions, and then you, at the end of the day, are the person that gets to decide what you want to believe in, right? That you're not steered one way or the other kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a great way to for maybe folks in that situation. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like if you're in an interracial relationship, that your marriage is a potential option, right? And you're thinking of having kids or building a family together, you kind of have to think a little bit about the impact on your kids as well, because they're going to be in a situation where they might have a little bit of an identity crisis. I'm just trying to think about it from that perspective, right?
Yeah, and you hear about it too. It's like children sometimes, they talk about how they feel confused, like they're not
Right.
one or they're not the other.
Right.
Like if they go to one group, they're not enough. They're like, let's say if they're mixed black and white, right?
Yeah.
If they go to someone that's their white community,
Right.
they're not white enough.
Right.
But when they're in their black community, they're not black enough. So
Right.
it's kind of like,
Where do they go?
Where
Yeah.
do they go? But then you always have to embrace the beauty, right? They're very unique.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you get the best of both worlds too.
Absolutely.
Right? So, but I can see that kids may struggle there because they don't know where they're accepted,
yeah,
kind of thing. And that's, I think, where the parenting side comes in, right? To get them exposure to both sides, but also like to
embrace the beauty,
embrace
the uniqueness,
the uniqueness of you being somebody that's born out of an interracial relationship.
Yeah.
Right. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, there are, I think, a lot of perks too, right? A lot of good things that come out of interracial relationships. I don't want this to feel like we're just saying all these negative things.
No. It's just we're not. I think we're just pointing out what could be difficult.
Yes, like being realistic here, right?
Being very realistic, and we acknowledge being in a relationship is hard
already. Yeah,
as is, and to put different factors in, external factors, additional ones, makes it harder, and just things you just need to think about. And a lot of times the uniqueness, the differences is what makes the relationship stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So would you say that there's something that, if you had to pick one thing that kind of comes to the top of mind when it comes to like the benefit of being in an interracial relationship, what would that be for you?
I think the top is just to learn about someone's culture. It made me more open-minded. And I guess, as I educate myself on someone else's culture, it's easier for me to empathize with people.
Yeah, totally. I think I agree with you there. the empathy part. It's hard for you to empathize with somebody unless you understand them, right? Where they're coming from, and to educate yourself about a little bit more about that person and your own identity too, you know? So, but I think we can both say we're in agreement, right? Like when it comes to dating in general, love is love. People are just, it's just, you should look at people as just another human being, right? And judge them on as an individual, and like, and their actions and
Yeah.
stuff like that, their character, and not just on like how they look or what religion they are or any of that stuff, you know? I mean, those are things that um are different potentially from where what your own situation is, but that doesn't mean it's a negative thing, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Um, Anything else that you can think of?
No, I mean, I guess if you're hesitant about, let's say if you meet someone and you're hesitant about dating them because they're outside of your race,
Yeah.
right? I think it's worth giving love a shot regardless of their race, because you might, because at the end of the day, what you'll realize is it's the person,
Yeah.
and you might learn something or two
Yeah.
by being in that relationship, and it could
Yeah.
be the best thing ever.
Absolutely. Because sometimes you might just sometimes you might even think like, wouldn't it just be easier, right? Just to date within your own race and not have to deal with all these extra layers of complexity. And I think of it as like, yeah, maybe it probably is going to be easier
Yeah.
technically, but if it's not really the person, but if it's like really somebody that you really love and that you find an attraction for, then it's like, isn't that worth it though?
Yeah. And there's no two person that are alike, right? Everyone is different. So yes, he or she may be outside of your race, but you're not going to be able to find that exact person that is your race. So
Yeah.
it's love is, I feel like it's individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think with that, that's the end of the episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed our conversation today. If you liked the episode, if you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast. We're available on all major platforms.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Magnetic Mismatch, and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channel.
Yep.
And make sure to tune in every Thursday, because that's when we release our new episode. And until next time,
Bye, guys.
bye.